Good morning, everyone. Morning. Welcome to the Next Century of Impact session. I'm Dr. Stacy Rosen. I'm the Executive Director of the Katz Institute for Women's Health at Northwell Health, Professor of Cardiology at the Zucker School of Medicine, and the President-elect of the American Heart Association. I am very excited to be here today to learn from our presenters and see some extraordinary work. As you know, for 100 years, the American Heart Association has been a catalyst for innovation. The AHA's Center for Health Technology and Innovation spearheads innovation at the nexus of science and technology, aiming to transform the landscape of cardiovascular care and beyond. CHTI convenes health tech companies as part of its Innovators Network, and today we welcome several of these innovators who will briefly showcase their science-backed, problem-solving innovations that will shape the next century of impact in health and well-being. But before we introduce our first speakers, I would like to recognize two extraordinary innovators from the AHA's Empowered to Serve program that is now part of AHA Ventures, which leads and coordinates the venture capital programs of the American Heart Association. First, join me in congratulating the two 2024 National Grant recipients who will each receive a monetary grant and a complimentary one-year membership in CHTI's Innovators Network. First, congratulations to John Wilcox, CEO, and Luis Blanco, CTO, co-founders of Diatec Diabetes. Diatec Diabetes, as you see, is developing Smart Fusion, a patented app platform connecting to insulin pumps to improve safety monitoring, failure alerts, and data support for glucose management. As you all know, diabetes is one of the primary drivers of preventable risk factors for heart and brain diseases. Their mission is to enhance the safety of medication infusion pumps with this life-changing technology. So thank you and congratulations. Also, congratulations to Sandra Saldana, CEO and co-founder of Alva Health. Alva Health is developing a non-invasive wearable device that uses artificial intelligence and machine learning algorithms to detect stroke symptoms, such as hemiparesis, weakness of one side of the body, and initiate emergency calls. Their mission is to create a game-changing solution to early stroke detection, which is extraordinary because time is brain. So thank you and congratulations. I would now like to recognize all of the members of the CHTI Innovators Network. If you are at your booth attending, please give us a wave. Everyone take a look. Thank you. Thank you for your work, for being here, and for really being part of our ecosystem at the American Heart Association. Now, our innovator companies will share their visions and insights on how their solutions will shape the future of healthcare. After the final presentation, you'll see these go along in rocket speed. We'll continue conversation, so please join us at each of the round tables. Everyone is invited and welcome to join. It's now my privilege to introduce our first presenter, Catherine Liao, Chief Strategic Officer for CardiX. Catherine?
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here today. I'm Catherine Liao. I represent CardiX. At CardiX, we pioneer the ability to non-invasively assess arterial health. And I'm really excited to be able to show you the advancements that we are doing to make these measurements accessible at your fingertips. I also want to quickly mention that we were also a returnee from CHTI as a finalist at last year's award. So lots of excitement in PPG, right? A light sensor that's now everybody that has a smartphone, a wearable smartwatch has a PPG on your body today. But it doesn't tell you very much. What if we can go beyond what the PPGs can do, which is mainly heart rate variability, to go into true central aortic indices that is truly indicative of your heart health. So I want to just raise attention to 3 important biomarkers that are probably new to you, but have been around and studied clinically for the last 2 to 3 decades. Augmentation index is a representation of arterial stiffness in the body. And so it's a great measurement to evaluate vascular aging and seeing how well your body is aging on the inside versus the outside. Pulse pressure amplification is a measurement to show that what is the arterial elasticity as our blood leaves from the aorta into the rest of our body and perfusing our body with oxygen-rich blood. And studies have now shown that a pulse pressure amplification of less than 1.3 is a cardiovascular risk, particularly in women between 30 and 60-year-old. And then lastly, subendocardial viability ratio, also known as Buchberg index, that assesses myocardial infusion in the myocardium and telling us how well your heart is working and receiving the oxygen that it needs to contract. And so the ability to now measure this is actually very accessible. We have now taken this out of academia research into a device that everybody has access to, starting with a device for the home that looks and works like a brachial cuff. But I'm not here to talk about that. What I'm here to talk about is really the underlying technology that it will enable all future wearables going forward. At least that's how we see the world going forward. So specifically, what we are able to do is that for most of innovators working in this space, they're looking at a peripheral waveform, which is on your left. Our ability is to now take that peripheral waveform, produce a central blood pressure waveform that is representative to what is happening at the aorta, and then perform pulse width analysis to get these key biomarkers. Now, I highlighted 3 earlier, but as you can see on the screen, there are a lot more that can be captured. Now, why these 3? For those of you who have been around for a while thinking about cuffless blood pressure, the challenges have been, how well does calibration work? How long do I need to calibrate? And will the calibration sustain when I'm standing, I'm walking, my arms raised, and so on? What we are doing fundamentally is say, there are parameters and biomarkers that are calibration free. These biomarkers, augmentation index, pulse pressure amplification, and subendocardial viability ratio actually measures the ratio of different features on the waveform. So we don't need to calibrate with a cuff. We simply need to get a waveform and then transform that with our proprietary transfer function to get these parameters. Does it work? Well, over the summer, we completed and published the results from our validation study demonstrating the waveform from the PPG comparing to the gold standard tonometer. As you can see, the radial tonometer, which is the gold standard for the last 3 decades or so, is in orange. The PPG transformed waveform overlays on top of that in blue, and the agreement is extremely high, and this is what we are excited about. What I personally want is for Polly to incorporate this into an Oura Ring so then I can also have it when I'm sleeping and getting those parameters. So in closing, thank you very much for the time here today and the opportunity for us to share with you the future whereby it's no longer about blood pressure, but about aortic indices that will transform health.
Hello, everyone. My name is Matthew Walsh. I'm the General Manager for Biopharma at iXlayer. And today I'm going to talk to you briefly about the patient-initiated healthcare revolution. Got to make sure this works. So we're going to start with a couple of stats. So, as many of you know, about 133 million people suffer from a chronic condition that requires regular access to healthcare, including lab testing, and 86% of rural U.S. counties don't have access to a cardiologist. And this isn't unique to cardiology. This is across the board for specialties. And, COVID was an interesting accelerator for many things, as we know. Basically, overnight, the entire U.S. population didn't have access to face-to-face healthcare, and we needed to find ways to become more innovative and accept digital practices and more remote practices, and physicians were also required to kind of offer those services. So today, 1 in 2 Americans over the age of 65 are using the internet for healthcare services. And almost 50% of people have used a remote diagnostic test for their healthcare. So there's been an extreme uptake in digital and remote services since COVID that is really kind of changing the continuum. And actually, physicians are pretty receptive to this. So 83% of physicians believe that at-home diagnostics help accelerate patients' care, so get them diagnosed more quickly, get them treated more quickly, and 80% of physicians also believe that it helps their own workflow. And I'm curious if there's any physicians in the audience who have experience with at-home testing, whether a patient brought it into your office or you've sent it home with a patient. Can you raise your hand? Does anyone have experience themselves in their physician practice with at-home testing? Okay, I think I saw one hand. Okay, so maybe not so much in this audience, but it is being adopted pretty significantly, and physicians are supportive of it. So from a patient initiation standpoint, what does this really look like? And we're seeing kind of this across the board. So basically, patients are going online, they're researching conditions, they're getting a home test, which they can use to assess some aspect of their health. If the results are normal, great, they have peace of mind. If the results are abnormal, they can easily get access to a telehealth visit where they can talk to a doctor, and that doctor can instruct them on next steps, whether that's ongoing monitoring from a remote standpoint or getting prescriptions sent directly to their home to treat a condition. And we're kind of seeing a lot of examples of this. Him, hers, and Rose have been around for some time. Those services provide access to men's and women's health, where you can get doctor services and prescriptions sent to your home. We're also seeing pharmaceutical companies get involved with this. So Lilly and Pfizer have launched programs where directly from their websites you can get telehealth services and you can get testing and prescriptions. So we're really seeing a lot of this uptake, but the main limitation to some of these programs is your ability to do some of these tests at home. So not everything can be tested at home, and that's a limitation to some conditions and categories offering these very convenient remote services. One notorious example of a difficult test to be done at home is the CBC, a critical test, the complete blood count, a critical test for diagnostics and ongoing monitoring. And so up until recently, that's been very difficult. But with innovative technology, we've been able to validate a CBC for home sample collection by using an innovative device that you can put on your arm. It uses microneedle technology, so similar to a continuous glucose monitor, where you put it on your arm, you press a button, and it draws 500 microliters of blood into a small vial that a patient can send via mail to a lab, and within 48 hours they can get their CBC back. So this obviously has numerous applications. One that we're considering right now is in the respiratory space, where patients can assess whether their severe asthma is eosinophilic in nature by measuring their eosinophil count, and especially if their current medication is not helping them manage their symptoms effectively, they can engage in a conversation proactively with their doctor about whether a biologic would be more appropriate to help them manage their conditions more effectively. So, in conclusion, the patient-initiated healthcare revolution is here, and technology is enabling more conditions to allow remote care so that more patients can get access and more conditions can take advantage of it.
All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for sticking around here for the final conference day and the morning of it. Hope you've had as good a time as I have. So my name is Pauli Ohukainen. I'm here to represent Aura, where I work as a senior research scientist specializing in cardiometabolic health. So I'm here to talk about tracking heart health using a smart ring. And for those of you who aren't familiar with our product, we are manufacturing the Oura Ring and making an increasingly big impact on a growing member population. We're trusted by over 1 million members currently. And the ring has started out as a sleep detector and sleep tracker, and we still consider sleep to be our bread and butter by providing people information about their sleep quality and duration, amount of deep sleep, and things like that. But we also provide information about your physical activity, recovery, and for women there are special features including cycle tracking, pregnancy insights, and our latest innovation was predicting fertile window for women looking to conceive. So, but what I'm doing here today is, and I have been doing for this conference, is that we're also now branching into cardiovascular health, and I'm here to talk about our latest innovation, which is cardiovascular age. So you already heard from CardiX about the importance of tracking arterial stiffness, and our cardiovascular age metric is a feature which is based on tracking your age-related arterial changes and accumulated arterial stiffness. And currently measuring, the gold standard measurement for arterial stiffness is measuring a carotid femoral pulse rate velocity. But it takes some specialized equipment and standardized conditions to be able to do that. You have to come in fasted to get comparable results. We've built an algorithm which is based on the optical PPG signal that is collected during the night as you sleep, and it gives you a correlation in our internal studies, correlation of 0.83 against the SphygmoCore device, which is used as a clinical reference device for arterial stiffness measurements. And we're currently investing heavily into this research. So actually, I'll be running off directly from this stage to poster zone 3. So if you're interested in hearing some of our, a little bit more about the research that we're doing, I have a poster there. So please join me there. And we've also just recently registered a clinical trial, which is focused on the AI opportunities in improving cardiovascular health. Namely, we're rolling out an Oura Advisor, which is an AI-based coach, in a way, an advisor that helps you interpret your cardiovascular data. And in a clinical trial, we're testing whether this advisor is able to give you information and guidance for exercise that's going to bring down your arterial stiffness. So, a member of Oura and user of the ring will get information about why arterial stiffness matters to them, what they can do to affect it, why it matters, and and you get a continuous metric that's moving in accordance with your lifestyle choices. So you will be able to track your arterial stiffness and cardiovascular aging in real time, and make lifestyle changes to see if you can bring it down. So with that, I would like to thank you for your attention, and please join me in the poster session if you want to hear more.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Moin Husseini. I'm the Chief Product Officer for AcuCardia. AcuCardia is an ECG-led diagnostics company, and we have been on the forefront of leveraging artificial intelligence to create new applications using an old signal, ECG. Our first technology here is leveraging AI to automate ECG interpretation. And this is the first layer of application in AI. It's hard to imagine the amount of new applications that will be possible, but the first part of that innovation curve is automation. And what we are offering to do for cardiac monitoring companies is streamline the interpretation component of ECG for ambulatory monitoring. We've had tremendous amount of benefit to our customer. We provide tremendous amount of benefit to our customers in shortening the amount of time it takes to read an ambulatory monitoring file, as well as improve the quality and accuracy of the findings. But the next level of innovation in the application of AI to ECG is going deeper, not just automation, but finding new information in this old signal. Our first application is developing a tool for aortic, sorry, my slide headings are cut off here, but our first application is developing a tool for aortic stenosis detection through ECG. Currently, aortic stenosis is vastly underdiagnosed, despite the fact that there's a significant mortality risk and significant costs associated with delayed treatment. Up to as many as 50% of cases, despite these costs and mortality risks, are underdiagnosed. Now, there have been a number of approaches to addressing the underdiagnosis problem for aortic stenosis, from digitizing stethoscopes to applying artificial intelligence to echocardiography. What we're proposing is a little bit different. It's leveraging the vast amounts of ECG data sitting latent in hospital system EMRs. We can then take those millions of ECGs sitting in hospital electronic medical records, screen them for aortic stenosis, and then get them into referral to treatment. And this has the benefit of processing massive amounts of data and patients at once. There's an easy deployment at the hospital system level without impact to the clinician workflow at the point of care. And there's no new capital equipment or devices to roll out or train on. Not only that, the AI seems to have a significant amount of capability for sensitive detection for the condition. So not only can we detect aortic stenosis through ECG, but we can detect potential future onset. We looked at the quote-unquote false positives in our data and found that they were not truly false positives. They were in fact early disease, or in fact at risk for aortic stenosis development in the future. And this is just one of the many applications that we've developed as part of our portfolio, but I give it as an example of what AI can do when applied to medical signals that we've been using for a long time, and now extend them into broader biomarkers for the future. Another key aspect of the application of AI is just the rapid pace of innovation in the space. So if you look at those three dots at the end of our timeline here, we developed this algorithm for aortic stenosis starting in April of this year. We then did 3 validation studies on 100,000 patients, published an abstract at HRS, and then got FDA breakthrough designation by October. So the pace of innovation that's enabled by AI is truly revolutionary. And going forward, the main differentiator for companies in this space will be, because of that pace of innovation, is who can get it to market fastest and best. And that's what we've been focused on, having been the very first to get FDA breakthrough designation with the aortic stenosis detection model. With that, I thank you and look forward to subsequent conversations after the program here.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to adjust my mic. Can you hear me well? All right, great. All right, hi, everyone. My name is Ben Green. I am the Senior Vice President of Services at AliveCor. AliveCor is known for our personal ECG devices. Came out with the Kardia Mobile, the world's first personal ECG device back in 2012. Our founder here is in the first row of the audience. And I'll be talking about the next century of impact, specifically related to ECG technology. All right, so before I talk about the next century of ECG technology, let's talk about the last century plus of ECG technology. So on the screen here, you can see in 1887, this was the first publication of a human electrocardiogram. This was performed by Augustus Waller, again in 1887, using a mercury capillary electrometer. And I won't go into all the details of what that is, but suffice it to say that is the first representation of a human electrocardiogram in print. Willem Einthoven, the Dutch physiologist and physician, took that initial concept and mathematically improved that and developed a new method of measuring the electrocardiograph using a string galvanometer. In 1901, he presented his first publication demonstrating use of the string galvanometer. There it is in 1901. In 1902 was the first publication of the string galvanometer used on a human. So that is really sort of the origin of the human modern day electrocardiogram, if you will. In 1906, that electrocardiogram using the string galvanometer was actually transmitted telephonically over a mile away from the patient to the clinic. So the origins of telemedicine, if you will, were born in the early 1900s. In 1924, so we're now the 100th anniversary of Einthoven receiving the Nobel Prize for the discovery of the mechanism of electrocardiogram. Between 1924 and 1954, so in 1924 we had Einthoven's triangle, the three-lead electrocardiogram. In the 1930s, the precordial leads were developed. In the 1940s, the augmented limb leads were developed. And in 1954, so we're the 70th year anniversary now of the AHA first publishing their recommendation on the standardization of the 12-lead ECG. All right, so what did ECG devices look like back then, and what do they look like today? Well, in those early days of Einthoven, the first practical ECG weighed 600 pounds. It required 5 people to operate. It used buckets of saline as the electrodes. You can see the visual right there of it. By the 20s, though, they were able to get that 600-pound machine down to about 50 pounds. You can see a visual of that. By the 1980s, we're down to about 20 pounds. In the 2010s, and even today, we're in kind of the 5 to 10 pound range. But we've gotten even better. So now in June 2024, so just a few months ago, AliveCor released the Kardia 12L, which is now at 0.3 pounds. And this is a full 12-lead ECG. I actually have one in my pocket. So here we go. So 600 pounds to this. So as I mentioned, this is the first single cable design reduced lead ECG. So there have been reduced lead ECG, 12-lead ECG devices before, but this is the first single cable design. So it uses 5 electrodes. It uses advanced AI to generate the full 12-lead ECG. And it is also FDA cleared for 35 algorithmic determinations, including rhythm and morphologies. All right, so what's the next century look like with respect to ECG technology? Well, my feeling is there's a lot of new applications and new sites of care where a device like this can really take ECG technology to the next level. So home use, think of this as potentially the next thermometer. Every home in the world might have a device like this. Planes, trains, and automobiles, devices like this can be in places where ECG technology is necessary. And the other really thing that I'm very hopeful for are the capabilities capabilities of ECG with not just diagnosing disease, and we're already seeing some really advanced things with respect to HCM and other non-arrhythmia diagnosis, valvular heart disease, non-cardiac diagnoses, but also risk prediction. So predicting disease, predicting mortality. On the screen here, you see a model that just was published in Lancet, predicting mortality based on a single ECG using artificial intelligence. So I know I'm over my time, so I will stop now, but thanks for listening, and enjoy the rest of the show.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me at the back? Excellent, thank you. It's great to be here. My name is Vijay Paul. I'm an emergency physician and co-founder of Vantari VR. I thought I'll do this presentation a little bit differently by starting off with a video and then sort of diving into it. Nope. Oh, there you go. Is the play button? No luck? All right, no problem. That's okay, let's go back to basics. So what Vantari is a virtual reality software platform that help train doctors, nurses, students how to practice procedures in VR before doing them on real patients. So you could think of us as a flight simulator for doctors. We're focused on 4 specialties, so cardiology being one of them, but anesthesiology, emergency medicine, and critical care. We have a booth over there, so if anyone's curious afterwards, come have a go with the technology. Now, why do we think this is important? So I guess I grew up in a time, even though I don't look that old, where it's all about see one, do one, teach one, and doing medical training on mannequins, cadavers, or animal labs. Now, there's a ton of data out there that shows that this is actually quite restrictive. There's lack of access to this sort of technologies. And also, how much can you do with a mannequin-based simulation? And as we go on this journey, it's becoming very apparent that most healthcare professionals now consider some sort of mixed reality solution the next generation of simulation training for healthcare. And really, when we look at it, why are we doing this and what kind of impact do we want to have as we go into this, in this century and going forward in terms of transformation of healthcare training? What this technology provides is an on-demand training platform. So lots of the times, all of these clinicians have to be off the floor, running workshops, and actually doing bedside supervision or training their junior residents. Vantari is able to then provide an on-demand platform for training. We are also able to, through this platform, reduce medical error associated with training procedures. How does that work? Our platform has been shown to reduce medical error to the tune of 40% compared to traditional modalities of training. And finally, all the costs associated with using mannequins, animals, and opening up packs, that can all be eradicated by using a software platform that's just scalable, only needs a software update. We've also done some cases in patient education. So as VR is such a scalable technology, you can do lots of things with it, not just in procedural training. And the future, what does that future look like as you're able to leverage this piece of technology? Think of it like what people talk about in terms of the metaverse. Think one day that you'll be in a living, breathing hospital. When you put on your headset, you can go into the hospital, choose a specialty on any floor, go in there, then actually choose a patient who will need a procedure and interface with that. It will be like some amazing asynchronous setting that you can do training individually or in collaboration. And what this also enables is integration with patient-specific data. So you'd be able to actually interface with data to get in a digital functional twin of the patient you're about to do a procedure on and actually do the most patient-specific training you could have ever done in your life. Just to finish off with, I guess, the AI conversation. So what we are looking at is that technologies such as virtual reality and artificial intelligence are naturally heading towards a confluence point where they can overlap with each other, they can actually leverage off of each other, and they can be incorporated to be able to provide a more holistic training platform. Things like LLMs could be leveraged to do content generation, have a co-pilot with you, almost as if you have a supervisor guiding you as you're doing a procedural training episode. And when we have these confluence of technologies, we can provide and maximize value and redefine what medical education and training looks like. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Dr. Liz Joy. I am the Chief Medical Officer at Lore Health. Lore is a health technology company that helps people experience everyday healing and helps them to improve their mental and physical health. And it's wonderful to have the opportunity to present to you this morning. So I titled this Stepping Back to Move Forward, and I think once you hear me present, you'll understand why I started with that title. We're really focused on addressing those psychosocial determinants of unhealthy lifestyle behaviors and chronic disease. So being that we're at American Heart Association, I thought we'll start with heart disease and step back from there. And we know the conditions that result in heart disease: diabetes, hypertension, unhealthy cholesterol, and obesity. And likewise, we also have a strong understanding of the behaviors that contribute to those chronic diseases, such as smoking, unhealthy diet, physical inactivity, excessive alcohol, and more recently, social isolation and loneliness. But underlying those behaviors are things like poor self-awareness, poor self-regulation, and really low self-efficacy, to engage in behavior change. And what we have, to treat the conditions that we're all well aware of are a lot of medications, and they can work spectacularly well when people take them as prescribed. And with respect to behaviors, we can send people to a registered dietitian, or maybe to an exercise physiologist, or maybe to a therapist, to address some of the other behaviors that underlie these chronic conditions. But what are we doing to address somebody's psychosocial challenges around self-regulation, self-awareness, and low self-efficacy? And I think that's really where Lore comes in. And really what we have, from my perspective, or from our perspective, is an imperative to scale solutions. And I think you're hearing that from all of the presenters this morning. Talking about, lifestyle and some of the preconditions to heart disease. Only 25% of U.S. adults meet the physical activity guidelines for Americans, and 10% meet our fruit and vegetable intake recommendations. 1 in 3 U.S. adults have prediabetes. At least 40% of U.S. adults between the ages of 18 and 44 are considered insulin resistant. Now we're up to 40% of U.S. adults with obesity. 25% of adults over the age of 65 are considered socially isolated, and we have these wonderful medications, statins, that have made such a difference in heart disease, but only 50% are actually adherent to the statin that's prescribed. But I think where there's huge opportunity here is really around cardiac rehab. And I wanted to acknowledge the work that Bill Krause and his team did at Duke, in an article they published in the last year, showing that people who participated in cardiac rehab had a 43% lower 180-day mortality and admission to the hospital. And why is it that people don't participate in cardiac rehab? Like so many reasons, right? But one of them is it's just not enough of a holistic, engaging experience for them that's really addressing some of the root causes of underlying heart disease. So we think Lore is one of those solutions in terms of really meeting this scaling imperative. We have a generative AI bot that does something very unique called reverse prompting, meaning it only asks questions. It doesn't give answers. So it can't get into trouble if it's only asking questions. And this conversational agent is also trained in solution-focused brief therapy. And so it's actually, almost a therapist in your pocket. We have an online social community with thousands of people in it. So we're connecting people to people and people to ideas. We're creating social norms that emphasize healthy behaviors. And then we have an integrated reward system, which helps people in that early extrinsic need for extrinsic motivation. So I think the opportunity here is scalability, it's reach and access to people who may have all sorts of challenges, reaching resources. We have a low barrier to entry, integrated rewards. We're addressing those root causes of unhealthy behaviors and subsequent chronic disease through reflection, social connection, improved mental well-being, and increased agency. And the opportunity here is not only the prevention of heart disease, but improving outcomes in heart disease. And I really think enhanced engagement in cardiac rehab by overcoming the patient barriers to sustain change and supporting everyday mental health. Thank you very much.
Good morning. First of all, I'll introduce myself. I'm Steve Pickett, CEO and a co-founder at Tabia Health. But before I get started, I wanted to just express a great deal of congratulations to the American Heart Association. I think all of us should reflect on how meaningful it is that this is the 100-year anniversary of the American Heart Association. How few organizations make it to 100 years, and there's even a smaller number who have never been better when they've reached that 100-year milestone. And certainly my experience here today, and I expect your experience, not just today, but through the course of the weekend, suggests to me that there's no doubt there's another 100 years and more, and indeed this organization will be driving even more impact as time goes on. So big congratulations to the volunteers, to the members, and to the employees of the American Heart Association. So in terms of Tabia Health, we have built an AI engine to address what we believe is a significant material problem in the world of healthcare, and that's related to adherence. And what we know from a number of different organizations is that adherence is indeed a significant problem. Excuse me, I'm trying to advance slides here. There we go. And even the American Heart Association has published data that would suggest that something in the range of 50% of patients don't adhere to treatment plans or pharmaceutical prescriptions that are delivered to them in order to help them manage their disease. And the majority of cardiac practices don't have the tools that allow that adherence to be measured or improved. And by the way, on top of the data that we have from the American Heart Association, the World Health Organization has been quoted as saying that the single most impactful way to improve human health isn't necessarily the creation of a new drug or a new treatment plan. It's just getting people to adhere to the scientifically validated best practices that we already know about. So it was our mission at the very beginning at Tabia to build a platform leveraging artificial intelligence that could indeed attack this problem. And so we've built a system that can, number one, measure adherence, and number two, deliver tools that can truly enhance adherence through a very tight collaboration between the care provider and the patients themselves. By the way, we have a space right over here. Kathleen Willard, Dave Mosier, two other members of the team, and myself are over there, and our Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Asif Ali, is there occasionally as well. In terms of our relationship with the American Heart Association, we formally announced that relationship last week, so we're very excited about it. It's a very strategic relationship to us. As a result of that relationship, we are now importing the care plans from the American Heart Association onto our AI engine and the educational material from the American Heart Association onto the platform in order to drive improved adherence in cardiology. We've previously started in other areas of specialty, and we know this is the area where we can make the greatest impact on human health. So there's no doubt we have very tight alignment with the American Heart Association. Let me talk a little bit about results. This data that you see here is as a result of a deployment that was done in another specialty. Our expectation is that we'll be able to share this kind of data at a follow-up meeting in the world of cardiology. We'll actually be implementing it, Dr. Asif Ali's office, here in the coming weeks, and we'll be certainly gathering data to define what kind of improvements we can make in adherence in cardiology through that experience. But to comment on this 4x improvement in adherence that you see on this slide, we were able to do that analysis by looking historically at an early customer's treatments that were delivered before our software was deployed. And what we did very specifically is identify the treatments that had previously been delivered to patients, and we were able to identify what the ideal date for those treatments should have been. And we put a 1-month window around that treatment date, and we categorized that treatment as being on time if it was within that 1-month window. And what we found that was a surprise to everyone involved in that particular doctor's office is that only 12% of the treatments were delivered on time. Today, I'm happy to report through the deployment of the Tabia Health AI engine, we're now delivering on-time treatments in the range of 62%, so a little more than a 5x improvement in terms of overall adherence. So thank you for being here, and if you'd be interested in learning more, please join us over at our kiosk. Thank you.
All right, well, we're all here because heart disease is the #1 killer worldwide. HealthSeer's Cardio platform will be an inexpensive, earlier detection, especially with older children. Our technology is phonocardiology, or PCG. We don't generate any sounds like the echocardiogram, and we don't detect any electrical pulses like the ECG. For over 20 years, I had a severe mitral valve problem, and ECGs and doctors with stethoscopes did not find it. So there are variabilities at the healthcare front door that allow a lot of these problems to be missed. And as for the public, we're busy. We don't always notice that we have a heart problem, right? A little AFib, I must have drank something wrong, who knows? So combine the difficulty of finding these symptoms with an apathetic attitude into the general public, and you have a critical problem here of unmissed heart disease. And if we wait for an event to begin caring, it could be a cardiac arrest. Out-of-hospital cardiac arrest direct costs in the USA alone are $4.5 billion, and it's likely that the indirect costs are 10 times that. I presume my cardiologist would have heard the murmur of my mitral valve regurgitation. But with 340 million people in the United States and only 10,000 cardiologists, we can't all visit one. We're expecting Cardio can make a huge difference in identifying those in the crowd who should visit a cardiologist. The first novelty of Cardio is its ease of use. At the top of your sternum is a notch. If you align it to the sternal notch, as anyone can do, it's now placed. And remember, our challenge is for kids between 10 and 21 right now. It's the data that we have for our AI. But anyone can do it. Any healthcare provider can do it. It's very easy. So that's our first novelty. Our second novelty is that we record on 4 tracks, and these are where a cardiologist would generally begin listening with a stethoscope, okay? So we We record only for 5 seconds on all 4 tracks simultaneously. Then we run these tracks through an AI back end. Cardio is AI-based, and it is not limited by human hearing. While it's difficult for humans over 40 to hear below 100 hertz, heart sounds go all the way down to a single hertz. It's a low-frequency device. The platform side of Cardio are things we built to gather good data and make AI models. So we also have an app, runs on a phone, go figure. We have a back-end database where we collect the data and all the demographics around it and identify the institution that collected the data. And we have a labeling tool to allow researchers to annotate recordings for AI training. We have a process for creating new AI models from selections of heartbeats. We're at working prototype phase, and we have AI models ready to detect murmurs. AI needs good data, and with serious investment of effort and money, in the future, we will be able to diagnose pathologies. Can't right now. All we can do is tell you you have a murmur. So Cardio is handheld, it has a phone app, and can go anywhere a phone can get service. We imagine Cardio going throughout the world, finding heart diseases even where there are no cardiologists. Maybe we can knock heart disease from number 1. And that's actually the one I should have been talking from. Sorry. Here we go. So, researchers worldwide, help us add to the AI models there, the life-saving AI models. If you will take the Cardio device and use it on diagnosed patients and collect the data and tell us what is that patient had. We don't need to know their name, but we need to know the pathology that you have diagnosed and how you diagnosed it. We will take that data, stick it in our database, and we can create AI models at your direction. So I was told that if only 1 to 3% of the population has these problems, then no one cares. The problem is who is in that 1 to 3% of the population? Your kids? And if it can lead to sudden cardiac arrest in the playing field, I think we ought to care, right? So thank you very much. Cardio by Healthseers.
Hey, great to be here. Thank you very much for taking the time. I'm Chris O'Connor. I'm the CEO of First History. First History has built a digital twin of clinical knowledge, and I'll explain what that is. And why it's important shortly. I'd like to start by thanking the American Heart Association, or have more of an appreciation. You really are the leaders in terms of specialty societies, in terms of creating a body of knowledge that can, when applied to patients, can improve their care. And you are the leader. I am, by background, I'm an internal medicine, critical care physician, and a respirologist or pulmonologist. So this is my first AHA, and I can say I am hugely impressed. So yeah, huge shout out there, because your knowledge is great. But I did learn 2 things here, both of which surprised me quite a bit. First is, only 13% of patients with congestive heart failure are getting all the guideline-directed medical therapy that they should be getting. And I think that's a huge factor. And the other is, there's only 15,000 cardiologists. You are a small elite group of people. And so the consequence of that is there's a huge gap between the knowledge you have and the patients who should be receiving it. So why is that? There's a couple of reasons. But one of the core reasons is to get the data to figure out what medications to prescribe and how to treat patients. One of the key processes around that is called taking history. Think about the last time you visited your physician, the clinicians in this. The question and answer process, pre-industrial revolution, hasn't changed in over 150 years. Your great-grandmother, if we picked her up to the mist of time, dropped her into the exam room, she would recognize the process because it hasn't changed. She wouldn't recognize anything else, but she would recognize the history. And so I think we can now say with confidence This process is not up to the task of doing all the history of present illness, past medical history, allergies, medications, social determinants of health, functional status, and think your average clinician sees how many patients in a day? 30, 40, 50 patients a day, and they're going to do that every single time on every patient. There is no way, and the literature supports that. So First History's idea is, what if we codified the scientific knowledge developed by the AHA, and we're working with them, experience knowledge, because experience is important, healthcare system knowledge, put it into a digital twin such that we could now use that to take histories from the patients in the pre-engagement space. There is a huge untapped resource in the healthcare system that we're not taking advantage of right now, and that's patients and their ability to tell their story. And so what happens when you get that done? Takes on average 4 minutes for the patients to complete, not a form. If anybody here enjoys filling out forms, please raise your hand, because I've yet to meet anybody in all my journey who likes filling out a form. Forms are a terrible patient experience. They're a terrible way to collect medical information, because if you present with shortness of breath, what form do I send you? Asthma form, pneumonia form, heart failure form, COPD form, not up to the task. You need an adaptive solution that replicates the medical interview, so the questions it asks are based on the previous answers, just like you're speaking to your physician. And when you get that right, we have a 97% patient satisfaction rating, which is crazy. Turns out patients have lots of challenges telling their story. On the physician side, or the nurse practitioner side, or the rest of the team, speeds you up anywhere from 15 to 40%. You never forget to ask a question. We can ask all the questions related to guideline-directed medical therapy. We can do risk scores and calculators. We can ask the questions related to CHA2DS2-VASc score, do the calculation, and put it in the report for you. So why would you do all that by yourself, by hand from scratch, when the application can do that for you? So a big win on that side. And then with respect to the healthcare organization, this is the data that underpins almost every organizational process you can think of. Diagnosis, treatment, prognosis, charge capture, billing, healthcare system navigation, you name it, it's informed by this data. And so by using the digital twin to improve this process, we can see a myriad of benefits for patient, provider, and for the healthcare organization. And I think clearly, when you think about it, where is this going to be 5 years from now? Today, if I asked you to raise your hand if you've used a digital twin in the pre-engagement space as a patient, I've yet to have anybody raise their hand. And it is my hope in 5 years from now, everybody raises their hand. Thank you very much.
Right. Hi, everyone. My name is Oliver. I'm one of the founders and the CEO of startup Noah Labs, and I want to talk about heart failure and how we can harness the potential of voice to improve management of the disease. Within 5 years, almost half of heart failure patients die. The question is, what can we do about it? If we look at this from a textbook perspective, this is roughly what a cardiologist would show us. On the very left, the patient is in a stable state. Hemodynamics, the fluid household is in order. And over the course of a month, the patient deteriorates and gets hospitalized in a congested state. And the question is, what technology can we use to monitor patients and to detect this pattern early on? Now, the standard of care, as you know, is still stepping on a scale. And it doesn't take a rocket science degree to figure out that can't be very accurate. Now, there is fantastic other approaches, invasive ones, checking pulmonary arterial pressure with catheterization or an implant. But there's also this new technology, voice, that we can harness. So we've developed Noah Labs Vox, the world's first technology to capture heart failure patients' voice samples via a mobile application and process them as an AI system. With this approach, we will be able to detect deterioration 2-3 weeks out before hospitalization, getting physicians enough time to adjust medication, to adjust diuretics, and get the patient back into a stable state. from a more physics kind of standpoint, this is what it looks like. We compute waveforms in the first step and then transform them into spectrograms, so frequency over time. And with this visual representation of voice, we compute the statistics, the AI really. And what we specifically look at is harmonic features, its spectral features, its claudal features, and its heart failure related features. And based on these features, we display an alert to the healthcare provider in their primary system, an RPM system, to notify them in time so they can adjust medication. From a clinical point of view, we got started, we're Berlin, Germany based for now, but bringing the company to the US now. So we got started on data that was collected in Germany at University Hospital Charité. Leo, my co-founder, is here today as well. He used to collect the data when he was still with Charité. We now run trials in the US and in Europe as well. We just finished a fantastic study with Mayo Clinic, and the results are very, very promising. I can't talk about them yet, but they will be out shortly. And they will be extremely encouraging. We're setting up another trial with UCSF where we want to benchmark against the PA pressure. So really compare it to the gold standard in terms of invasive measurement. And we, this is the wrong slide. Let's see. I think something didn't work out. All right, so very brief, it's Leo and myself here. We got a fantastic third co-founder, Marcus. He used to work at Harvard Medical School as an AI software developer. We're supported by cardiologists. Thank you for the slide. Let's see if you can, no, I think there's slides missing. By cardiologists and AI software specialists with vocal biomarkers. And we're now setting up our FDA clearance trial, and we're still looking for sites. So if you're interested in joining us on that, please come talk to me now or to Leo after this presentation. Thank you very much.
Why don't we give another round of applause for these extraordinary innovators? Thank you all for your participation today. I hope you agree with me that what you've seen is extraordinary. I have been a practicing clinical scientist in cardiology for over 30 years. I have been coming to this meeting since 1989, and yes, it is an extraordinarily inspiring group and extraordinarily inspiring ecosystem that we work in. And the beauty of what the AHA does is to convene and catalyze scientists, innovators that really allow us to make good on our mission, a world of healthier lives. So thank you all very much. I really encourage anyone who's here to go to one of the two tables. Maybe if our table leaders can raise their hand. And please take an opportunity now to meet with these extraordinary innovators and founders and learn more. Thanks very much, everyone.